Elias hadn't planned to go into the attic. The heat of the afternoon had pressed heavy against the roof, and the air in the house was thick with disuse and grief. But something, perhaps a draft, perhaps a murmur too soft to be memory, drew him up the narrow stairs. The attic groaned as he entered, wood planks whining like they resented his weight. The smell hit him first, old roses crushed into rot, iron, and something sour like spoiled milk and bile. The light bulb above flickered with a buzzing whine, casting long, stuttering shadows across the hoarded relics of his grandmother's life. A floorboard near the center creaked unnaturally underfoot. Curious, Elias knelt, tracing the cracks with his fingers. The wood felt damp, swollen with something more than time. He pried it loose. Beneath, nestled in a bed of dry, blackened puddles, was a lace-wrapped bundle crackling and yellow with age. The cloth stuck to his skin like a cobweb as he peeled it back, revealing a dusty cassette recorder. A single tape was inside, labeled in frailer due script, "Only listen alone." His breath caught. The plastic casing of the recorder was ice cold, though the attic was stifling. He pressed play. For a few seconds, only static whispered from the speaker, the kind that worms its way deep into your ears. Then came the voices, layered, indistinct, like children muttering prayers in a cave. The eighth whisper was sharper, clearer, and it knew his name. A metallic taste flooded his mouth. Copper. He wiped his nose. Blood. He jerked back. But the recorder continued whispering even after he pressed stop. The buttons stuck. The machine trembled in his hands like it was alive. A hiss of air escaped from the floor, and a gust of freezing wind swept through the attic despite the sealed windows. The light bulb shattered. Darkness fell. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the walls began to pulse slowly, at first, like breathing. Faint stains bled through the wallpaper, dark and thick, smelling of decay and iron. In the shifting gloom, Elias thought he saw a script written beneath the blood. He reached to touch it, but the wall was hot burning, yet he felt nothing but cold in his bones. Panicked, he stumbled back. The recorder fell. The whispers stopped. Silence. Then nothing. The room stilled. The air warmed. False relief flooded him. Elias almost laughed. And then the whisper returned. Not from the recorder. From behind him. He turned slowly. There was no one there, only a mirror tall, crack at the edges reflecting his pale face. But behind his reflection stood 7 shadowy shapes, hooded, still. His grandmother's journal had mentioned the ritual once. In hushed stories passed down from the old Pashto women, when the 8th whisper is heard, do not speak, do not turn, and above all never listen twice. But Elias already had. The mirror fogged with breath not his own. In its surface, something began to write, one trembling letter at a time. To the countdown had begun. Elias tried to convince himself it was just stress, grief, the kind that crept in after funerals and sat heavy on your chest for weeks. The house had always made him uneasy. Too many shadows, too many locks on doors that didn't need them. But after playing the tape, that unease curdled into dread. The velvet curtains no longer seemed like heirloom decor. They loomed like funeral shrouds. They absorbed sound, light, hope. The house never truly went silent, even when Elias held his breath. There was always something breathing just out of rhythm with him. At night, he heard it clearest: click, creak, shuffle, then nothing, then again. The sounds came from the walls, the ceiling, the gaps between the floorboards, always circling him. The scent of decay worsened. He followed it through the halls, past old family portraits whose eyes no longer aligned with their faces. The smell was wet and coppery, like fresh blood swallowed in a dream. It clung to his clothes, his hair, even his tongue. When he ate, everything tasted like metal and ash. One evening, he found a small wooden box tucked beneath his grandmother's bed. Inside were 7 burnt matchsticks, bundled with crimson thread. A folded note sat atop them, written in Urdu, for the nights he listens. Burn 1 to silence the voice. 7 matchsticks. 7 nights. A ritual born in fear, now incomplete. He lit one that night. The matchstick flared green before turning to smoke. And for the first time in days, the whispers stopped. Elias slept, dreamless, whole, false hope. By morning, the smell returned stronger now. He awoke with dried blood crusted at the corners of his mouth, and the mattress beneath him felt warm, pulsing faintly like a living thing. The walls had begun to crack, thin lines splitting outward from the attic door like veins under pale skin. When he touched them, they were damp and cold, but not from moisture, from something else. He avoided the mirror, but the mirror didn't avoid him. It appeared where it hadn't been, beside the stairs, in the guest bedroom, on the back of his spoon. Always just behind his reflection stood 7 figures in darkness, waiting. The journal entries became more frantic the deeper he read. His grandmother had been obsessed. She wrote of the Nashguzar, a folkloric creature said to linger at the edge of reality, gathering names, voices, souls. The 8th whisper, she claimed, was not a voice at all. It was a door, and when it was opened, something stepped through, but not all at once. The clock in the hallway stopped ticking that afternoon. The air hung motionless, the kind of thick stillness that came before a monsoon. Elias leaned against the wall, panting, eyes fluttering. He thought he saw movement again, only this time, not behind glass. A voice whispered from the radiator vent, right beside his ear, 3. But this time, it wasn't counting down, it was counting up. It began as a flicker, just a twitch at the edge of his sight, like something skittering across the baseboards, or ducking behind doorways when he turned his head. Elias blamed it on exhaustion. The dreams had gotten worse. He no longer woke, screaming, only sweating, staring at the ceiling and listening to the faint patter of something pacing in the attic above him. The whispers didn't return right away. For a while, that felt like a blessing. He tried to focus on cleaning the house, as if dusting shelves and folding linens might somehow restore order. He even laughed once, dry and cracked, when a book tumbled from a shelf and thudded harmlessly to the ground. The house is old, he told himself. Old houses creak, but old houses don't whisper. Not from the water pipes, not from the inside of locked closets, not from beneath your pillow. He started noticing the mirrors again, how they lingered in places they shouldn't be. The antique mirror in the hallway showed things slightly out of sync, his lips moving just after his words. His reflection blinked slower. Sometimes it didn't blink at all. Then came the message, written in the condensation of the bathroom mirror one morning. Though the room was cold, count them. He wiped it away. It returned, this time backward, as if scrawled from inside the glass. That same day, he found a prayer amulet hanging from the doorknob of the basement. One he didn't place. It was crudely made, 3 strands of black string knotted around a tiny brass bell, caked in something brown. Old Pashto folklore spoke of these talismans, gadi banna, binding bells meant to trap wayward souls to ring only when the spirit stirred. But the bell remained silent until midnight. Then it began to chime, soft, muffled, as if underwater. Each chime was followed by a whisper. The first one was just a sigh. The second, a word in a language he didn't know. By the 8th chime, Elias was shivering, the blankets soaked through with sweat. His mouth tasted like rust, like he'd been chewing metal. His ears rang with phantom echoes, the same voice repeating his name over and over until it lost meaning. He fled to the kitchen, clutching the edges of the counter. His fingertips pressed into something slick. He looked down. Blood. A thin trail of it seeped from the kitchen walls, oozing from between the tiles like the house itself was weeping. He panicked, grabbed a cloth, scrubbed. Gone. The walls were clean, the floor dry, no smell, no stain. False hope. When he turned around, the reflection in the oven door didn't follow. It stayed frozen, mouth open, eyes wide, whispering something silently. Its lips moved 8 times, and then it smiled. Elias ran, but not before he heard the softest scrape from the inside of the walls, like nails, like teeth. And from the attic above came the 9th sound, 4. But Elias hadn't heard the 4th whisper, so who had? Elias stopped pretending he wasn't afraid. He barely slept now. When he did, he woke choking on phantom tastes, bile, blood, something sour and chemical that lingered even after he rinsed his mouth. The house pulsed with a low, maddening hum. He had taken to pressing his ear to the walls, convinced something inside was breathing with him. No longer behind. Not anymore. It was within. So he went back to the attic, back to where it began. The trapdoor groaned like it hated him for returning. The air up there was thick and wet, humid with decay, like something festering in a sealed tomb. Dust clung to his clothes, oily and foul-smelling. As he sifted through his grandmother's old boxes, his fingers brushed something cold. Bone cold, a stack of notebooks, bound in crumbling leather, tied with fraying red twine. Her handwriting scratched across each page, frantic, looping backward at times as if she'd written while looking into a mirror. The entries dated back to 1956. We called them to ask for peace, for answers. There were 8 of us. Each whispered a name, each heard it whispered back. Except me. I heard my own. I shouldn't have listened again. I should have never said it aloud. Beneath that, burned into the page, he listens back. Elias flipped further. Pages filled with drawings, circles, twisted symbols, faces without features. One sketch showed a tall, thin figure looming behind a group seated around a mirror, each one labeled with an Urdu name. 7 names. The 8th space was blank. He found a folded sheet tucked into the binding, a prayer written in Urdu, a protective verse. He read it aloud, voice shaking. For a moment, the attic seemed to settle. The hum dimmed. The mirror in the corner cleared. His reflection looked normal again, just him, pale and sweating. But him, false hope. The attic door slammed shut behind him. Whispers erupted from every corner, cascading over each other like a rising tide. Elias clutched the prayer, shouting it louder, but the paper tore in his hands, disintegrating into ash between his fingers. The light flickered and went black. He dropped to the floor, shaking, whispering apologies into the dark, then silence. He opened his eyes. The mirror was gone. Relief washed over him. He crawled to the attic door and pulled it open. Cool air drifted up, crisp and quiet. Downstairs, sunlight spilled through the curtains for the first time in days. He exhaled, laughed, shaky, broken. Laughter, the kind that never reaches your eyes. Then something brushed his ankle. He looked down. A new notebook had been left on the attic floor. Not his grandmother's. It was his. Same handwriting, same smudged corners. Pages filled with words he hadn't written yet, detailing everything he had just done. The last page was blank, but as he stared, ink began to rise from the fibers, words etching themselves slowly. 5. You remembered too much. Elias didn't sleep anymore. Not really. He drifted, floated down the edge of waking and dreaming, caught between the ticking of the grandfather clock and the rustling of things that didn't belong in walls. Every time he shut his eyes, he saw the notebook, that last page. 5. The ink hadn't stopped writing. By morning, new pages had filled in, describing thoughts he hadn't yet thought, actions he hadn't yet taken, but someone or something knew he would. He sat on the floor of the parlor, the recorder resting in his lap. His hands trembled. He hadn't touched it in days, but still, it whispered. No tape, no power. Yet the voices persisted, curling through the air like smoke. They murmured in tongues he didn't recognize: Pashto, Persian, Arabic, English, all tangled together like a chorus sung by rotting lungs. The 8th whisper always came last, and now it was getting louder. He pressed play. He shouldn't have, but he needed to know, to understand. The static hissed. One whisper, a child crying. To his grandmother's voice, soft, pleading, close. Your ears, Elias. 3. His name, spoken backward. 4. His own voice, though he hadn't spoken. 5. A rasp like dry leaves. A word etched in his spine. Sharik. He dropped the recorder, but it kept playing. He backed away, tripping over the frayed rug. As he fell, his hand brushed the floor. It was wet. He looked. Dark stains oozed between the floorboards, thick and black-red, spreading like veins. The copper scent flooded his nose. It clung to the roof of his mouth, bitter, nauseating, like sucking on old pennies dipped in bile. Then the room fell silent. The tape stopped. Elias let out a breath. For a moment, it felt over. The air cleared. The whispers ceased. The house stilled. False hope. The mirror across the room, the one over the fireplace, shifted. He didn't see it move. He felt it, like a heartbeat syncing with his own. The glass shimmered, warped. His reflection leaned closer, lips moving without sound. Elias stepped forward, entranced. The mirror fogged over. Words formed in the condensation. Here's you now. A screech rang through the house metal, dragging across bone. The mirror shattered inward, but no glass fell. Instead, a shape began to press through, like fingers straining against skin. Long, jointed wrong. Hungry, Elias screamed and ran, slamming the parlor door behind him. He barricaded himself in the kitchen, chest heaving. He remembered the bell, the talisman. He grabbed it from his pocket and whispered the old Pashto protection phrase, Usko nam mat lina, Usko deko mat. Do not speak his name. Do not look upon him. The bell didn't chime. He dared to hope. Then came a soft knock from the other side of the wall, not the door. The wall. Another notebook lay at his feet. The new page read, 6. He speaks through your mouth now. Elias had stopped checking the mirrors. They showed too much, now reflections that lagged. Smiled too long, whispered things he hadn't yet said. Even his own shadow had begun to act on delay, as if it waited for a cue from something else. But today, it wasn't the mirrors that called him back to the attic. It was the smell, not the usual rot or copper tang that had become his house's perfume. This was older, thick with mold and iron, like graveyard soil soaked in blood and sealed in stone. He followed it up the stairs, feeling the temperature drop with each creaking step. Frost laced the attic door. His breath clouded in front of him. The trapdoor was already open. Inside, the attic had changed. The old boxes had been shoved aside. The floorboards, once dry, now bowed and grown beneath a thick, damp rot. At the center was a patch of fresh nails hammered into the floor in a perfect circle. Elias's skin prickled. He pulled at them, one by one, hands stinging from cold iron. Beneath, he found an old iron box wrapped in waxy parchment. The symbols carved into the lid weren't just unfamiliar, they moved, writhing when he tried to focus. His fingers trembled as he peeled the wax away. The moment the seal broke, the entire attic exhaled. A long, low groan that wasn't wind. Inside the bones, brittle finger bones ranged from the spine. A burnt candle fused to a child's rib, and at the center, a photograph, sepia-toned. Curling at the edges, 8 hooded figures sat around a mirror. Each had their hand pressed to the glass, but one figure had no face. On the back, scratched deep into the paper in Urdu, never speak the 8th name aloud. He tasted blood, realized he had bitten his tongue hard enough to bleed. It dripped onto the photo. The faceless figure moved. Elias dropped the photo and staggered back. The box snapped shut on its own, nearly catching his hand. The attic groaned louder now, a heartbeat rising from the floorboards, matching his own pulse. Then overtaking it, he ran downstairs, breath ragged, bile rising in his throat. His vision blurred at the edges. The walls bled again, dark, tar-like, ooze pulsing between the wallpaper seams, moving like veins. He grabbed a towel, tried to stop the flow, but the blood hissed, burned. Then everything stopped. The bleeding halted. The house fell silent. The lights stabilized. Outside, the wind died. For a single heartbeat, it felt normal again. False hope. He turned toward the hallway and saw the photo, the same one nailed to the wall. His own face now sat among the hooded figures. His hand was on the mirror. He screamed. The recorder clicked on downstairs. Static. One whisper. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Each name carved into his mind like a blade. The 8th voice hadn't spoken yet, but it was listening. And this time, it breathed in. Elias no longer recognized his thoughts as entirely his own. His inner monologue had changed tones. There were pauses, small silences that didn't belong, like someone else flipping pages inside his skull. Sometimes he'd think something I need to run, only to hear it echoed a second later, as if repeated by a voice inside his mouth that waited for him to think first. He avoided speaking out loud now. The whisper was beginning to answer back. He spent hours staring at the mirror. In the kitchen, his reflection frozen in subtle defiance. It didn't blink, it didn't breathe, but it watched. The longer he stared, the more it felt like the reflection was studying him, memorizing every movement, every flinch, every hesitation. And then, one night, it spoke without moving its lips. "You're not Elias." That's when he knew the voice wasn't inside the recorder anymore. The whisper had moved in. The old prayer bell, once thought to protect, had gone black with rust. It hissed when he touched it. The notebook now wrote before he acted. Predictions. That became inevitabilities. He tried to throw it into the fireplace, but the flames bent away from it, recoiling like they too feared its ink. He began writing compulsively. Words scrawled across the walls in red ink, or maybe blood he couldn't remember where it came from. Each time he tried to clean it, the words just reappeared elsewhere. He speaks in echoes. He learns you by listening. Desperate, Elias tore through the boxes of his grandmother's belongings again. Beneath an old bundle of incense and grave dirt wrapped in muslin, he found something he hadn't noticed before: a mirror shard sealed in wax. A page beside it bore a passage from a forgotten hadith, scribbled with shaking hands. When a jinn learns the shape of your silence, he becomes your shadow. The eighth whisper is no longer a voice. It is the mouth behind the mirror. And then, in ink darker than the rest, burn the name, forget your face. But it was already too late. Elias hadn't just heard the whispers. He'd spoken them. He'd repeated them in dreams, in mutterings while walking the halls, whispered them, into reflections, into keyholes, into silence. He was part of it now. The voice no longer visited him, it used him. When he tried to speak aloud again, his voice came out wrong, deeper, echoing slightly, like it traveled from somewhere far beneath the earth. Even his tongue felt foreign, thicker, wrong. He bit it hard. Copper flooded his mouth, but the voice kept speaking. 7 before you. You are the 8th. He fell to his knees, pressed his hands to his ears, but the sound wasn't external. It came from his bones, vibrating through marrow, a droning thrum that blurred his thoughts like static in water. The walls pulsed, breathing in tandem with him. The floor quivered beneath his knees like something alive waited just below. And then the mirror quiet, until now began to fog. This time, no countdown, only one sentence: you were never alone. Elias awoke to screaming, but it wasn't his own. It came from the house itself, an agonized groan that rippled through wood, plaster, and bone. The walls twisted, buckling inward and outward as if the house were breathing wrong. He stumbled from the hallway, barefoot, feet slapping against a floor now slick with something thick and warm. He looked down. Blood, no thicker than blood. Black, laced with filaments of silver. The scent hit him next: copper, decay, rot. And beneath it, something sweet, cloying, like perfume turned sour with time. His stomach lurched. He tasted bile in the back of his throat. The whispers had changed. They no longer trickled like forgotten memories. Now they surged, a chorus of voices speaking in tandem, sometimes over each other, sometimes through him. Words overlapped inside his skull. His ears rang with ancient syllables, some in Pashto, some in Persian, some in something older, where every word felt like a rhyme. Fell to his knees in the foyer. The recorder sat there, waiting, its red light blinking. There was no tape inside, hadn't been for days, but it pulsed in sync with his heartbeat, with the house's breathing. Click, static, whisper 1, whisper 2, 3, 4. Each name carved into his mind now, etched like scars beneath the skin. The 7th whisper screamed, not a voice this time, a shriek that split his thoughts wide open. And then silence. He knew what came next. The 8th whisper, the one that didn't speak, the one that listened. His hands moved without his permission. He reached for the recorder, fought himself. Failed. His fingers hit play. And this time, the 8th whisper didn't come from the speaker. It came from inside the walls. The room darkened. No dash collapsed. Windows folded inward. Door frames twisted like vines. The walls pulsed with blood, veins stretching across wallpaper. In frantic patterns, paint peeled, not from moisture but from heat. Scorching heat that sizzled against his skin like open flame. The air turned to copper. His teeth ached. His gums bled. From the mirror at the end of the hall, it stepped through. No feet, no face, just height, shadow, and a mouth that ran vertically down its chest, stitched and sealed. But straining. The entity didn't walk. It glided, dragging. Behind it a chorus of whispers that curled round Elias like smoke, tasting of ash and forgotten languages. As it passed, the wooden panels beneath it blackened. Rotting in real time, Elias screamed, prayed, pounded his fists into the floor, and for a moment it stopped. The whispering ceased. The thing paused. Elias blinked. Gone. He dared to breathe. False hope. Because then the walls exploded outward, not with noise, but with voices, hundreds of them, shrieking, begging, praising, wailing. Faces stretched from the drywall like melting wax, eyes wide, mouths open in eternal gasp. And from the mirror's shattered frame came a final voice, soft, near. Inside his head, you listened. Now open your mouth. By morning, the house had gone still. Elias was no longer sure if he had passed out or blacked out. Time no longer moved in minutes or hours, just flashes, bright, cold, burning. His limbs ached with a deep, raw tremor, as if they had been forced to move against his will through the night. His mouth was dry, but his tongue tasted of rust. His teeth were loose. He sat on the attic floor, staring into the warped mirror that now lay flat in the center of the room. It showed nothing. Not his reflection, not light. Just absence. A pit in the glass, like a wound torn through space itself. And though it made no sound, he heard it. A deep hanging vibration inside his skull, like someone running wet fingers along his spine. Every nerve screamed. The recorder lay beside him, dead, cracked, yet its red light blinked in a slow rhythm, like a fading heartbeat. He tried to smash it again, with a shoe, with a brick. It refused to shatter. Then he saw it. A photograph placed carefully at his feet. 8 hooded figures seated around the mirror. This time, all were visible, no blank faces. The 8th figure, set tall, arms folded, eyes wide. His own eyes. Elias. But it wasn't a photo anymore. The image moved. The heads turned. Each one lifted its face toward the camera, toward him. They mouthed something silently, over and over. He read their lips, say, the name. He didn't know the name, not yet. But part of him wanted to. The notebook appeared again, pages blank, except for the first line. The mouth is ready. The voice is yours. Elias screamed and tore it apart, shredding page after page. But the pieces floated back together like ashes rising in reverse. He clawed at the mirror, trying to destroy it, but his hands passed through the surface like fog. Then, behind him, the bells rang. The prayer bell, the one rusted and black, jingled without wind. Another and another. 7 chimes. 7 names whispered. Through the house, etched into the floor in thick, red strokes, each letter alive, squirming. He covered his ears, wept, pleaded. Silence. For a moment, it all stopped. The mirror dulled. The recorder blinked out. The air stilled. Elias dared to believe. False hope. He blinked. He was standing now, though he hadn't moved. His hands pressed against the mirror's surface. The attic was gone. The house was gone. Only the reflection remained. Behind the glass, Elias stared back, not breathing, not blinking, but smiling, mouth sewn shut with ink black thread. All 8 figures stood behind him, waiting. Then, a voice inside his skull, ancient and hollow, asked, which side are you on now? And the mirror whispered back, 7 were vessels. The 8th is the key. The house was silent, too silent. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums, flooding your veins with a cold so deep it numbs your very soul. Elias stood before the mirror, no longer a reflection, but a window to somewhere else, somewhere darker. The air was thick with the smell of copper and decay, curling like smoke around his skin. The floor beneath his feet was slick with something warm and sticky. Blood, bile. The taste rose in his throat, metallic and bitter. He swallowed hard, but the nausea remained. The walls around him seemed to pulse, slow and steady breathing. Veins of dark, thick liquid seeped through the cracks in the plaster, bleeding into the corners. The house was alive, or possessed, or both. He tried to move, but his limbs felt heavy, like they were submerged in water. His mind raced, fragmented. Was this real, a nightmare, or a curse centuries old, finally claiming its due? His grandmother's old journals flashed in his mind, stories of the Nashguzar, the silent listeners who haunted the Pashto hills long before the house was built. 7 whispers to bind them, the 8th to free, rituals burned and broken, prayers muttered but unheard. Elias remembered the prayer bell. its rusted chain rattling in his trembling hand. He rang it once, twice, nothing. The sound seemed swallowed by the house's hungry silence. The protective words he had repeated now felt hollow. Useless. The mirror fogged suddenly. Letters formed in the mist slowly, deliberately. The end is the beginning. His breath caught. The glass rippled, as if water flowing beneath the surface. From the depths, a face emerged. Not his own, not human. Eyes like dark pits, mouth stitched tight. It reached out, long fingers stretching, beckoning. Elias stumbled back, heart pounding. The walls closed in. The floor groaned beneath him. Whispers softer now began again. 8 voices, layered, haunting. He tried to scream, but found no sound. His throat tightened, choking on invisible threads. The mirror cracked. Splinters spread like spiderwebs. Yet from the fractures, the whispers seeped, escaping. And then, silence, for a moment. Before the 8th whisper returned, a breath in the dark. Listen. Elias's eyes snapped open. He was back in his room, alone. The mirror was gone. The walls normal. The blood dried. A fragile hope flickered. But as he reached for the light switch, a faint voice whispered from the corner, "You heard us. Now we hear you." The curse was not over. It was just beginning.